All right, I think we're ready to rock and roll. So welcome everybody to today's virtual session, Make Singularity Part of Your Business Model. My name is Tim Daly, and I currently serve as the president of Recycle Colorado, as well as work for Waste Not Recycling. My co-champion today is Neil Noble, also serving on the board with me and works with Republic Services. We'll be behind the scenes today while you are engaged and educated with a great lineup of industry expert speakers. The goal of today's session is to get into the profitability that can be generated from integrating circular economies into your business model. What are the opportunities and challenges to make it profitable? We intend to show you profit-driven business models in all aspects of the value chain, product circularity, packaging circularity, and to processing and end markets. We can then discuss the pros and the cons and the challenges of circular economy from their perspectives during the Q&A segment after each speaker. If time permits, we'll have a panel Q&A at the very end. Today, our facilitator is Raj Buch, Director of Circular Economy Practices, and drives ASU's efforts to provide holistic solutions to the complex sustainability challenges facing today's businesses. I'm sure his job will get even tougher as we come out of this recent pandemic and the changes that our economy has had in daily routines that have not been very recycling friendly. Raj, please take it away.
Tim, thank you. Thanks for the intro, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the panel discussion on trying to get profitability from circularity. So, as Tim said, our goal is to look across the entire value chain and try to get some experts from different organizations to talk about how they benefit from circular economy within their value chains, their industrial processes. And it's my pleasure to have on the panel Sara Axelrod from Ball Corporation, Renee from Molson Coors, Mike Bernier is from Swire Coca-Cola. They're going to give us their corporate perspectives and how their companies are benefiting from circular economy. John Lair is going to give us the recycling perspective, how the back end of material recovery and how his company is benefiting from making circular economy successful, of course, being in the recycling business. And then Basak-Smith is going to talk about how his company is working on new products using circular economy as the basis for his business model and how they've come up with different forms of packaging and connecting into end markets. So with that as the kind of the panel, I do want to give a little bit of a brief about the work that we're doing at ASU in the Phoenix area. I presented that at the keynote yesterday as well. But our circular economy work has been around building a regional economic development platform for creating jobs, starting new companies, and firms for advancing circular economy in the solid waste system in the Phoenix area. We've been working on that over the last 6 years and continue to do so. So with that as the background and the introduction of the panel, as Tim said, the way it's going to work is each panel member is going to present, and we'll then have a Q&A session. And if time permits at the end, we'll have a bit of a panel discussion as well. So if you could put your questions in either the chat box or if you want to send them directly to the facilitator, then use the Q&A button. And with that, Neil, if you can flip to Sara, and Sara, take it away.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Sara Axelrod. I am the North American Sustainability Lead at Ball Corporation as of January 2020. So fairly new in the role in this weird year that is 2020. But spending a lot of my time focusing on this topic and really excited to be here today. Prior to Ball, I spent some time in the food and agriculture sustainability world. So I was leading the marketing team at Land O'Lakes Sustain. And so my background coming from sort of the more holistic food and ag space now into packaging, you know, I think has really been a nice, as we're looking at the value chain and talking about circularity, a nice entree point for this conversation. I'm going to go moving forward, jumping right in. You know, I think the next slide, sorry about that. So, you know, starting with where we at Ball sit in the value chain, right? As a packaging manufacturer, we sit very much at the top of that supply chain. And looking at from our perspective, so for those of you who don't know, right, Ball used to make the glass mason jars that we all know and love. I have many in my house. I hope you all do too. But actually, this isn't Ball's business anymore. We have moved away from the glass jars and now predominantly focus on aluminum beverage packaging. So the cans that everybody knows and loves as well, and then the aluminum cups, which are new to the market, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But for us, you know, working with aluminum and being such a large share of the market is a really fascinating perspective as we talk about circularity. You know, looking at the inherent circular values of aluminum is, you know, right now here in the US, there's an average of 73% recycled content in aluminum. It is the highest of any other packaging substrate. And thinking about that, and we'll talk about this a bit more when we talk about life cycle analysis, you know, this is really great and exciting for aluminum, that infinite recyclability. It can be a can, can be a can, can be a can, an infinite number of times. And in fact, recycled cans can be back on the shelf after use in just 60 days. So, you know, while this is all really positive, we take it as our mission at Ball to not only utilize the inherent sustainable nature of aluminum, but really enhance it as well. So working, you know, as we see here in this bottom right-hand corner, the 50% recycling rate in the US. This is something that, you know, could be better, right? We need to design things that are inherently recyclable and support a system. And aluminum cans do that. They're, you know, they're one of the easiest packaging materials to recycle. They account for the largest portion of MRF revenue, and they have the highest recycling yields of any packaging material, but still only 50% recycling here in the US. So where I'm spending a lot of my time is how do we increase that recycling number in addition to, you know, helping make the most sustainable can on the market. So designing for the circular economy, for those of you who joined the keynote, I apologize that you're going to see this slide twice. But this is how we think about circularity at Ball. It is both, you know, what can we do with this inherently circular material and how can we help enhance it? And then also how can we help create a system that supports the circularity of that material, right? Because everything we do on the front end doesn't actually matter unless it gets recycled through the system. So thinking about it in 5 buckets. The first is, of course, responsibly sourced aluminum. And going back to that 73% recycled content number, this is really exciting. It's a really high number. You know, I think as the aluminum industry are eager to increase recycling and get that number even higher. But in the event where we do have to use virgin material, making sure that we are responsibly sourcing that virgin material as much as we possibly can. So working with the Aluminum Stewardship Initiative to make sure that, you know, we are doing everything possible to responsibly source that aluminum. As of right now, all of our plants in Europe are 100% ASI certified and have started receiving ASI certified metal for that virgin material. And we're on track here in the US to be 100% certified, hopefully in the next 18 months. Looking at this pie number 2 there, no materials of concern. This means any materials that we are adding to that aluminum also doesn't impede the recyclability and or the circular nature of that material. So working with cradle to cradle on our inks, dyes, coatings, and ensuring both the health and safety of those materials, as well as, again, making sure that they support the inherent circular nature of aluminum. Looking at number 3, making the most metal efficient can on the market. So this is where, you know, when we think about the impact of packaging, using less metal has less impact. So how can we do that? And, you know, new design functions, again, that designing for circularity, starting really at the front end of making sure that, you know, we are being really efficient with our resources. Number 4, looking at sustainable operations and climate leadership. This is all of our manufacturing facilities. So for example, here in the US, all 23 manufacturing plants use 100% renewable energy through several virtual power purchase agreements. Our science-based targets just became approved by the Science-Based Target Initiative earlier this year, which is really exciting. And when we think about, you know, again, our piece of circularity in our corner of the world. Our scope 1 and scope 2 emissions are our customers, and many of the other panelists on this call, Molson, Coors, Coke, et cetera, these are their scope 3 commitments. And so how can we, at the end of the day, do everything we can from our manufacturing perspective to help support our customers in their own really, very impressive sustainability goals? And finally, in, pillar number 5, going back to, if it doesn't actually get recycled, none of this matters. None of all of the work we've done up front to design this package to be as recycled as possible matters. So again, really looking for increasing not just collection rates, but real recycling rates near 100%, and making sure that every can that goes through a recycling system gets incorporated through those high yields and is back on the market as a can in less than 60 days. This is a little mini case study, and for many of you who are here in Colorado, hopefully you've seen this cup over the last year when we still went to things like sporting events at the Pepsi Center at CU Boulder, CSU earlier this year. This is the aluminum cup. And when we think about innovation, back to this idea of needing to design for something to be circular, that was really the genesis of the cup. And, looking for an alternative innovation solution to, a single-use plastic cup. And so wouldn't it be great if there was a cup that had the benefits of aluminum, that could be recycled all the time and was easily inputted into the current recycling system? So what's great about this cup, not only was it designed obviously out of aluminum, but it was designed so that in the recycling system, it's treated just like an aluminum can. And, it can be baled with aluminum cans. It's all the same material. So this is really exciting. And, I hope that as we see the cup expand, we're looking for a full launch in January of 21. Although for a very short time this week, the cups were available on Amazon. I do believe they have sold out, but take a look. It's very exciting. You can see and feel these cups in your own home, which is really great. The other thing that I will say, in addition to everything that we at Ball are doing internally to support the circularity of the cup and the can and designing for that, I think from a larger thought leadership perspective, back in that sort of bucket 5 of how can we help increase recycling rates and really further the system. And I think a part of that is transparent measurement. And what does it mean to be truly circular? And it's, for us, a big part of that is knowing what the impact of packaging actually is. And so earlier this year, we released a comparative life cycle assessment that looked at 3 sizes of aluminum, 3 sizes of PET, 3 sizes of glass, and 2 sizes of glass and 2 sizes of cartons, to evaluate the potential environmental impacts associated with these various packaging types. And I think, for those of us on the phone who work in sustainability and are familiar with life cycle analyses, they are not the sexiest of tools, and you fully appreciate that. But where I think they can be a little misleading sometimes in their snapshot in time, and they are, generally a more linear assessment of impact. Where I think we tried to push forward on this life cycle assessment is the need for incorporation of circularity. And what is the impact of packaging when you take into account recycling rates and recycled content, and really enhancing that methodology to take circularity into effect, to truly better understand the environmental impact of these packaging types. So this was the goal, to get to an LCA that included this idea of circularity, to share, with the industry writ large. And where we've netted out is, I think this is a really important first step in this evolution of an LCA methodology. It is by no means perfect, and we are very transparent about that. This was a fully done third-party LCA, peer-reviewed. Really took a lot of pride in the evolution of this methodology. But again, being very transparent about the fact that it's not perfect, and there's still more to do if we want to truly understand how this packaging is measured and how it impacts the environment from a circular perspective. So as we think about where LCAs used to be, sort of right in here in this linear thinking, all the way to a more circular representation, we're probably about here, about halfway. We can understand what real recycling rates mean, you know, versus just collection. We've incorporated recycled content, but there's probably still some more work to do. So I would encourage you all, as you all in your organizations are thinking about life cycle analyses, to start to, you know, intuit and think about some of these more circular concepts in terms of measurement. This is a great piece of the LCA, and I should have mentioned going forward, I'm going to show you just a couple key insights from the LCA. That said, again, for us, it's actually less about the insights themselves and more about the methodology. So first of all, I encourage you, if you're interested in more of the LCA, go to ball.com/realcircularity. And there's a full deep dive. You could read the full 300-page report if you have a little time this weekend. Otherwise, you know, a great little one-pager that talks about this regional LCA. And so using one of these key insights, this is from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, a material circularity indicator, really looking at how circular are these materials. And, you know, what that means is how many times can this material be reused, in the case of the can, be used as a can over and over again. So here, you know, here at the aluminum can, we see, you know, a fairly good circularity ranking. Glass also, you know, very high. Breakage, of course, is a problem with glass, but that's not unexpected. Cartons is interesting, and I think this note on the MCI methodology is important. The MCI methodology includes, from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, that non-recycled renewable fibers as circular. Other methodologies do not. So that's just a note there on this slide. This is one of the things that I actually find really fascinating, and this is one of my favorite slides coming out of this, is some forecasting of what this could mean for how we should be thinking about recycled content and where we can find impact. And, you know, for Ball, really looking at where should we be spending our time and energy to reduce the carbon footprint of our cans. So what this slide is telling us is, if, you know, these are the current recycled content rates of cartons, PET, glass, and aluminum. And all of these numbers are in the data sets available online, but came directly from every industry specifically and their trade associations, just so everybody knows. So what this means then is this forecasting and this sensitivity analysis, if you were to increase recycled content of glass or of aluminum or any of these substrates, you know, that's how much you would have on your carbon footprint. So for example, you know, with glass bottles and with aluminum, you know, the slope of those lines is very steep. And for us at Ball, as we think about circularity, it would be really easy to say, oh, well, aluminum has the highest recycled content, we're good to go. Instead, we're saying, oh my gosh, look how much gain there is to have on the slope of that line. That's really exciting. You know, how can we increase recycled content to gain some of that slope and make this product even more circular and have a lower impact? This is another sort of breakdown of that slope of the line of where we see the potential gains coming out of the can. So hypothetically, we see, using this forecasting, that we could reduce the carbon footprint of a can by almost 50%. And so again, how we think about, you know, working with our partners, you know, Molson, Coors, Coke, et cetera, and helping support them in creating a more sustainable package for them, you know, these are areas where we see opportunity for improvement. So renewable energy over here, as we've talked about, you know, if we move to 100% renewable energy, that's a 10% reduction in the carbon footprint of a standard 12-ounce can. Super exciting. And right, we're on track to do that here in the US. Increasing recycling rates, which we've talked about as a big priority. We could increase recycling rates and reduce the carbon footprint of the can by over 13%. Recycled content, you know, a similar increase or a similar reduction in carbon footprint. So this for us is a great roadmap of, as we think about our business model and as we think about where we are going to spend and invest our time and time with our partners and, you know, moving forward the sustainability of this packaging material, you know, here's where we're going to invest and here's where we're going to think about this product. And I think just to wrap here, you know, we've used this term circularity and real recycling versus collection rates. And to close, for us, the way we define real recycling and real circularity is one, this product design. We need to design for things to be truly circular, like with the cup. There's a tremendous amount of consumer education that needs to happen around recycling and the importance of collecting this valuable material. We need to support policies that drive recycling rates. So, and that, working in partnership with our customers to make sure that we're doing this in a way that is smart and enhances the whole system. Investing in recycling infrastructure. And then finally, going through the LCA as I just did, this call for more transparent measurement and standards as we think about impact as it relates to circularity. And so with that, I would love to turn it over to Renee at Molson Coors to talk about how this translates now down from our packaging manufacturing into her world on the more customer-facing perspective.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. Can you guys hear me? Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Renee Paris, and similar to Sarah, I have not been in my role for a very long time, about 4 months now. So prior to Molson Coors, I worked at Sunoco Products, the packaging company, for about 6 years in a number of sustainable packaging initiatives, and then worked full-time in a sustainable packaging role. Spent a fair amount of time in our MRFs and other recycling processors. And then I was also a Peace Corps volunteer, so that's just a little about me. Molson Coors, you'll see, is the Molson Coors Beverage company. So that's important to point out now that it's not just a beer company anymore, that Molson Coors is really pushing the envelope and moving beyond just beer. We've got, non-alcoholic drinks, hard seltzers, and lots more to come. So keep your eyes out for that. But of course, since this is for a Colorado audience, of course, that the Molson Coors brand is a merger of the families, the Miller, Molson, and Coors families. And so I'm a category manager for the sustainable packaging initiatives at Molson Coors. So, as cliched as it sounds, circularity is really in the DNA of Molson Coors. Our former Coors Brewing chairman, Bill Coors, once said that waste is a resource out of place. And I think that is just the easiest way to explain circularity, is that it's a resource that has just not been taken care of appropriately. I saw something recently where people were describing unrecycled cans and a number of just wasted resources. And it's really staggering when you think about the billions of dollars of materials that just get thrown away, as opposed to being used in a more of a circular system. So I would be incredibly remiss if I didn't point out for anyone on the call who's not aware that it was the Coors family that first realized how to recycle aluminum cans. So they, really were the pioneer in the circularity movement before it was popular or cool or required or whatever adjective you want to use to describe it now. But, certainly that just because Molson Coors started things, decades ago doesn't mean that, we feel like we're done. We have 2025 and 2030 goals that focus on packaging emissions, recycled content and packaging, and ensuring that our packaging is 100% reusable, recyclable, or compostable by 2025. So I am going to highlight 6 of the topics that Molson Coors has focused on. And I think what's really interesting here is it goes beyond just packaging. So for circularity at Molson Coors, it's a lot more than that. And I do have to say that my expertise is going to be in the packaging initiatives, but if you have a question about anything else, I will be happy to find out the answer for you and get back to you. So wanting to start, even though it's not at the top of this circle, we can, next slide, is activating employees' recycling programs regionally, because I think that's, you start at your own home, right? I think it's a really important way to look at anything. And so there were a couple of examples of recent projects that I wanted to share with you. The first was in Czech Republic in a brewing facility that we have there. It's one of the locations that has returnable bottles. And so you can imagine the bottles come back and then the labels get washed off. And so there was all of this waste label material that was left over, and the Czech team worked to find a specialized recycling partner that was able to take those waste labels and make them into low-grade paper products like egg trays. And this effort has given approximately 250 tons of waste every year a second life, right? And so it's just continuing to make sure that we're looking at everything. And that, to you know, the whole point of this webinar is the business case for circularity. And to me, it doesn't get more basic or more understandable than if you were paying someone to throw something away or to landfill something for you, and you can either give it away for free or even get paid to take, so for someone to take it off your hands, then the company wins, the environment wins. It's just it's a win for everybody. Another example is last year was our first anniversary of Product 50, which was a major recycling project at one of our breweries over in the UK. And this was one that was more of a, you know, we have macro projects and micro projects. This was more of a micro project for just that brewery. But essentially they were trying to increase their own recycling rates from 31% to 50%. And so as a part of that, they removed all of the paper cups and plastic cups from the on-site vending machines and replaced them with reusable ceramic mugs and glasses. And within the first 9 months, the location used, in 9 months, 53,000 fewer paper cups and 24,000 fewer plastic cups. So just to show you, you know, you can, you know, like I always say, think globally and act locally, right? So the next topic, and this is something that Sara had focused on a little bit, is lightweighting of packaging, and then also encouraging our consumers to recycle. One of our big goals in our sustainable packaging space is to reduce carbon emissions associated with our packaging by 26%. And so we can't do that without partners like Ball helping us get our cans just as lightweight as they can be, while still protecting the product inside so that it's still safe and refreshing and carbonated when you get it home and can drink it. And so that's certainly been a project that we're working on. And again, necessarily in almost every case, if you're lightweighting packaging, you're going to be saving money and also saving resources. It's just, it's a win-win for everybody. Then we've also recently joined the Recycling Partnership. And in the Recycling Partnership, we're working with 45 other leading brands, companies, and organizations to help nurture and sustain the U.S. recycling system. I think, you know, most people on the call are probably aware that the U.S. recycling has limitations, especially compared to our, you know, other Western counterparts. And so the Recycling Partnership focuses on ways to improve, whether it's through consumer education or grants for municipalities or bins or what have you. They have a lot of different initiatives to help recycling just get better as a whole in the United States. Another example, to bring it back to Colorado again, is, you know, the partnership, the Rocky Mountain Bottle Company facility partnering with others to close the loop on recycled glass. So this program not only allows us to source high quality recycled glass directly from our neighbors and reduce the miles that the materials need to travel to get to our facilities, it also means that we can turn old bottles into new ones in just 30 days. So imagine if you put, you know, a can and a bottle in your recycling bin today, you know, you'll have another can in 60 days and another bottle in 30 days. And that, to me, I mean, you just don't get more circular than that. It's pretty amazing how quick that can get turned around. The next, whoops, we go backwards, going backwards. Okay, there we go. The next topic is a totally different aspect of circularity, and this is our spent grain. So we have a lot of spent grain and yeast that are left over from the brewing process. We've had some initiatives that have been better than other initiatives. We've, you know, dabbled in snack food partners and animal feed, but certainly the real salient point here is that 1.2 million tons of spent grain and counting of spent grain and spent yeast have been sent to farmers and other businesses for beneficial reuse. So again, these are tons and tons and tons, millions of tons of material that previously we've been paying to haul away to a landfill and now are being given a second chance to work their way through the economy and be more circular. The next one, converting wood to plastic pallets. And I know there's probably some of you on a sustainable packaging webinar that are cringing at the word plastic, and I would encourage you to not do so. But essentially what we're working on here is right now a lot of our export pallets, most of our export pallets are wooden, and so we send them overseas and then we don't know what happens to them after that. They're just gone. Whereas in our domestic breweries, we use a lot of plastic pallets. And so what we are working on now is using more plastic pallets. These are very durable HDPE pallets that, you know, might last 5 years or more before they are recycled either into another plastic pallet or into some other product that uses HDPE. So they're reusable several times, they're lightweight, and then when they're done, they get recycled. Another initiative that's really important to Molson Coors is water. So our 2030 goal is to improve water quality by reducing pollution, eliminating dumping, and minimizing release of hazardous chemicals and materials, and cutting in half the proportion of untreated wastewater, and substantially increasing recycling and safe reuse globally. So again, water is something else that we're looking at in a completely circular manner. Right now we have 13 anaerobic digesters treating wastewater before it's discharged from our breweries. And then we have 2 new breweries opening up in Canada, and both of these have been designed with energy consumption, CO2 emissions, and carbon footprints in mind. We're partnering with a local city to upgrade the municipal wastewater treatment facility, adding a biogas generation unit that will produce a carbon neutral biogas fuel source. There's also going to be a high strength wastewater pre-treatment facility that will use less energy than conventional systems, produce lower levels of waste sludge, all while requiring fewer chemicals. So this is something that's really important to us, not only that we are judicious with our water use, but that we're also reusing it as much as we can. One of our key indicators is hectoliter of water used per hectoliter of beer produced. And then last, but definitely not least, one of our 2025 goals is to achieve zero waste to landfill at all of our brewing and major facilities. So, you know, like the Czech example that I gave, you know, you have all of these materials that previously we were just regarding as trash, and now we're going back to Bill Coors' words and saying, you know, this is not waste, this is a resource that is in the wrong place. And so how do we get it to the right place? And so right now, 17 out of our 28 manufacturing breweries have zero waste to landfill, and we're working on the goal so that in the next 5 years, by 2025, which is when our goal is, we can get the other 11 on board as well. And so that's just a quick overview of circularity at Molson Coors. I know we'll have time for questions later. And again, if I don't have the answer, because I am still kind of new, I do promise to get it to you after the session today.
All right, thanks, Renee. Before we jump to Mike with Swire Coca-Cola, I'm going to ask Sara a couple of questions that popped in the Q&A box. There was a question for Renee, but I think you answered it in the presentation. The question was about what's the turnaround time to get a fully recycled glass bottle back into use, and you said it was 30 days, so that one got answered. But I'll ask Sara the questions that are regarding aluminum cans. So the first question is from Michael Port. Is the cup potentially reusable? Could a sports facility, or for example, have a collection point for these cups to sanitize and reuse them for future customers?
Yes, but not to that extent. So the cup is reusable a certain number of times, but where the heat and the sanitation comes in, that is where it wouldn't be reusable in something like a sports facility, is it would start to break down the coatings associated with the cup. So, you know, for example, if you have one at your house, we had a lot of cups disappear from the system. CU Boulder kids were really excited about the cup and took them home and wanted to continue to drink beer out of them and water, and that's great. You know, hand washing them and refilling them with a cold beverage, absolutely. You know, probably less so in a industrial sanitation perspective for a sports arena.
All right, thanks, Sara. Randy Mormon's asked a couple of questions. I'll read the first one. The second one's kind of related. LCA of aluminum is challenging because the extraction of bauxite ore has a significant impact on the environment, huge carbon footprint, deforestation, and water pollution as a result of the mining. While it is true that if we were able to recycle all the aluminum we have and make new aluminum from 100% recycled content, aluminum would be on top as a material that was more sustainable than others. Unfortunately, we weren't anywhere close to recycling all of our aluminum, and making new aluminum from 100% recycled content. Can you speak to what is being done to make this transition so we don't have to depend on bauxite ore mining to make aluminum? I think this, of course, ties to the graph that you showed, but if you can add anything to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Randy, first of all, you're exactly right. Bauxite mining a virgin material is really challenging from an environmental and a social perspective as it's related to aluminum. And we are very, very aware of that, hence our involvement with ASI, the Aluminum Stewardship Initiative. First of all, we want to use as much recycled content as possible, to your point. If we have to use virgin material, we want to do it in a way that doesn't fully solve the problem, but is a really important step in the right direction. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is I would encourage you to take a look at the full LCA that's available online, and talking through, how this methodology takes into account recycled content and recycling rates, because that's actually very different here with this insights. And there's a great graph in there that using the current recycled content and the current recycling rates for all of the various substrates. So really where we are today in 2020, and a comparative analysis amongst those 4 different packaging types. And you'll see kind of where aluminum is. And it's, it's not the best in some formats and it makes sense in other formats. And it's, I think it's an apt discussion. The next thing is probably that sensitivity analysis of, for us, you're right. The more we can increase recycled content, the more sustainable and the more circular aluminum is, right? And the less we rely on virgin material. So that quite frankly, what you're touching on is why I have a job, is trying to figure out what we can do to increase the recycling and the capture of this material, get it into a reuse, increase that recycled content number, and use less and less virgin material. So, like with Renee, we are also partners of the Recycling Partnership. We're proactively working with several partners on some legislation, also looking at some private sector solutions to increase collection and again, back to that real recycling definition. So doing everything we can to push this forward and be more proactive.
Thanks, Sara. And then a follow-up question from Randy. The polymer liner in each aluminum can has health and environmental concerns. What is being done to address this?
Also a great question, Randy. This is one we get a lot. So this goes back to, if you remember the pie chart and working with cradle to cradle, it is crucially important to us that our coatings and liners and, inks, dyes, et cetera, meet a certain standard of circularity and recyclability. So 1, no material that we use is going to impact the recyclability of the can. 2, from a health perspective, Ball is proactively working with our global suppliers to ensure that our coating systems and processes address both the trends around the conversation around liners, the legislation, Prop 65 in California, and protecting both the can as well as the brands of our customers and the products that they put in the cans. And so working very closely with these suppliers, looking at BPA&I as sort of this choice coding for the future, and working with our customers proactively to see where this makes sense. I would say on that note, one of our suppliers, Sherwin-Williams, really exciting, that for their work on BPA&I coatings, they were just named, now I'm going to draw a blank. I believe it was Fortune, most innovative ideas of 2020. So, really exciting that, again, leaning forward on this and doing what we can proactively to support not only the legislative trends, but the consumer trends as well, and increasing the recyclability of the can.
Thanks, Sara. Thanks for that answer. Neil, if we can go to the next slide, and Mike, if you can take it away.
Yeah, I'll take it away. Those are 2 good presentations. Thank you. I think I kept mine a little bit briefer. I'm gonna take the approach of looking where we're going in the future. But while I'm doing that, I'm going to tell you what we've done in history. So I'm Mike Bernier. Unlike Sara and Renee, I've been in my job for a while. I've been with Swire Coca-Cola USA Sustainability since 2008. So I've watched sustainability evolve quite a ways. It's exciting to see where we've gone. We're Swire Coca-Cola USA, which is a part of Swire Coca-Cola Global. So we're based in the USA. I have USA operations responsibility. We also have half the population of China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, making us the 4th largest bottler in the Coca-Cola system. So from there, well, we'll go ahead. I can't not take this opportunity. We've recently come out with our new 2030 SD strategy. I'd like to share that with you. It's kind of our choice, our future is our tagline. And this is a strategy we're quite proud of. So, I mean, the strategy is 3-pronged. It's product, planet, people, full sustainable development program. I focus on planet, and we break it up into climate, water, packaging, and waste. I'll go through each one of those with you. I'll show you what our new goals are. I'll also talk a little bit about what we've done in the past. So climate. Climate is where we've made our most significant change. I think you heard both Ball and Miller Coors talk about Scope 3. We've now expanded to Scope 3. We've been primarily based on working on Scope 1, Scope 2, so in our control. In our manufacturing plants, we've reduced our energy usage by about 25 to 30%. We have a metric. We call it an energy usage ratio. We budget for it every year. I'm required to report up to our parent company on a monthly basis how much electricity we used. And we've been able to reduce that about 25%. Same with fuel usage. Fuel usage, we've been able to bring down about 10% over the past 10 years. Kind of got to that point, and there's not a lot more technology out there that we've been able to identify at this point. We have hybrid vehicles. We struggle a bit with those. They seem to be underpowered, but we're always investigating new technology. Where we're really going now is Scope 3. I think starting with our commitments, I think the big ones is 100% renewable electricity in all core operations by 2026. And that's a big one. That's all China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and here in the US. At this point, we're trying to look at doing that without a VPPA, and that'll be our last resort. I think the primary reason for that is we're working in regulated markets where Swire Coca-Cola operates. We have been submitted and accepted to the Science Based Target Initiative. 70% reduction in Scope 1 and 2, set at 1.5 degrees. A 30% reduction in Scope 1, 2, 3, set at less than 2 degrees. I think some of if you look at where we're going to look in Scope 3, Ball, you're going to be a big help to us because about 35% of our total emissions is our packaging. The other 23% is our cold drink equipment. We have some aggressive plans of transitioning all of our cold drink equipment out of greenhouse gas emitting refrigerants into non-greenhouse gas emitting refrigerants, which also will give us an electricity improvement of about, I just looked at it yesterday, about 37% electricity improvement there. And that accounts for 25% of our Scope 3 emissions. The other part of that is our ingredients. We're working on our ingredients. The Coke company is doing the primary amount of work there. And so I'll leave that to them at some point when we have more information to come back on. I think that's pretty good for commitment right now. Water. So I think this is where we've had our most success to date. So in 2006, I believe it was, Muhtar Kent, the then CEO of Coca-Cola, came out and made a pledge that we're going to replenish back to nature an amount of water equivalent to what we use in our product. Like a lot of people looked around, had no idea how we're going to do this. We knew we can start inside our manufacturing facilities. We knew that we could start reducing. We developed a metric of water usage ratio in our plants. We measure for every liter of water that comes into our facility, how many liters of product go out. So a perfect water usage ratio would be 1, only 0.2 were to go down the drain. We started there, and nationally we're around a 2.1, 2.2. Nationally, we're now around a 1.6. We have a goal with Swire Coca-Cola. That's a 1.45 for the whole company. For USA, our goal is 1.4. A lot of initiatives have a glide path put into place of what projects we'll need to do and where to get to 1.4. I think the most important, though, is I go back to what the Muhtar Kent pledge was to return to nature an amount of water equivalent to what we use. The first question was, okay, we can reduce water, but how do we grow water? And I think it's like any initiative. And I think, and when we get to the waste and packaging, it's going to be the same thing. It's working with government. It's working with NGOs. So we went about working with NGOs, World Wildlife Fund, Nature Conservancy, Trout Unlimited, and said, okay, well, how can we accomplish this? And surprisingly enough, they had projects teed up. A good example would be, I'm going to give a Verde River because it's very, can describe it pretty easy. They have the Verde River in Arizona. They have water rights. They have manual gates to close them off, divert water to the water right to the people that own the water rights. Many times they're manual, they're antiquated, and they never get reopened, and they dewater the river and wastewater. So people like Trout Unlimited, Nature Conservancy can come in, put in automated head gates, improve their agriculture infrastructure, and line the canals so we're losing less water. Funding for a project like that can save up to about 500 million liters per year. So with that project alone, we've done a couple there. We're able to offset about 500% of what we use in our Tempe, Arizona plant. Across the country, there's been over 150 projects like that. Across the world, numerous projects of those sorts. And I'm proud to say in 2015, the Coca-Cola company globally achieved that goal that Muhtar Kent set. In 2016, Coca-Cola North America achieved that goal. And in Swire Coca-Cola regions, we're at about 256% of the water we use is being replenished back to nature. I think one other thing we do, and that goal down bottom of have all SVAs and SWPPs validated by third party. I'm proud in the US, we already do that. And what those are source vulnerability assessments, a source water protection plan. So for every manufacturing plant that we have, we've hired hydrogeologists to come out, assess our watershed, excuse me, assess our watershed, understand what our risks are, understand, and a risk could be anywhere from drought tolerance, and in Colorado is one of those, obviously. It could be anywhere from point source contaminations upstream. It can be municipality infrastructure. And then we develop a source water protection plan and say, okay, what can we do to help mitigate these risks? Many times if it's drought, it means we need to work really hard in the community. We need to work with our local water provider. We need to work with our NGOs. We need to work with our government and say, how can we participate in replenishing more water back to the environment? So with that on water, I think I've covered water well enough that we're ready to go. In packaging. So with packaging, I think we do have to work really closely with companies like Ball. We do have to work really closely, and we're members of the Recycling Partnership. And we came out last year with a pledge. It's called the World Without Waste Pledge. And it's the big pledge is to recover a bottle or can for every one that we produce. That's big. I don't know, and no one, it's just like water. No one knows exactly how we're going to get there. We know we're going to have to collaborate with NGOs again. We're going to have to collaborate with government. We're going to have to collaborate with Ball. We're going to have to collaborate with Miller Coors. And we're all on this same mission together. And I think that's why we're all a part of the Recycling Partnership. The TRP and the Coca-Cola Foundation gave a pretty big grant into Colorado. I believe it was about $150,000 this last year to do a study of, okay, how can we educate communities on recycling? Waiting for results back on that. It's been promising, but I think what we're going to need to do is keep studying, keep learning, say, how do we improve that? I think she said earlier that aluminum was at about 50%. PET nationally is at about a 30% recycled content, and that needs to get improved. So we need to find a way to improve that, and we all need to work together to achieve that goal. The next is if we're going to use primary packaging at 50% recycled content, that first part has to get done. And I like to refer to that's a litter problem. We have a problem that containers, beverage containers, not just beverage containers, but many containers are not being recycled. And that's a first step we have to solve. And I think we talked about this earlier in the panel is if we're all going to achieve our goals of 50% recycled content or 70% recycled content, we're going to have to get that content and that material back into the stream. We have to make our primary packaging 100% recyclable. We're in the 98 to 99% range, but we do have some pieces of packaging, closures, and Tetra Pak that is not. So the Coca-Cola R&D company is working. They're working very quick on that. We're doing things like even if it is recyclable, you start seeing our Sprite containers. They're not going to be green anymore. We're coming out with clear containers because I think anyone that's in the room knows that the green is a contaminant for the PET supply. We're going to achieve zero landfill for all of our operations. In the US right now, we are at about, excuse me, our plants range from a low of 94% total recycling rates to 99% recycling rates. So we're there, and by definition, we're close to 100%. We need to get to 100%, and I think part of that's going to be driven by the market now and what's accepted as recycling. I think that covers about most of what we're doing now, but one more point. I think she brought up plastic pallets. I believe that was Miller Coors. We're also doing the same thing. So we did our own life cycle analysis. The wood disappears. The wood disappears. The wood lasts 2 to 3 years maybe. It goes back. It can be repaired, put back into other pallets, but a lot of it ends up in mulch. The plastic pallets we determine, including fixing them and repairing them, last 12 to 13 years and then can be recycled. So we've done exactly the same thing. So I'm glad to hear someone came up with the same solution that we did. And I hope that generates some questions. Please feel free to ask questions along the way or afterwards. I'm here to help.
Thanks, Mike. We do have a couple of questions. The first one from William Germain. Does your water commitment include embodied water used in manufacturing of the containers?
It does not include water used in the manufacturing of containers. That's strategy number 3 we're moving towards. We're reevaluating right now the whole water commitments and the whole water value chain, and we're developing that strategy right now, which includes that, which would be like a scope 3 in water, and getting to the whole water footprint. So the answer is no, not yet, but we're working on that. We're also going to start getting more targeted in our water strategy. It's great that we are at 100% or more water replenished. We're going to get more targeted in our regions, which we already have in Colorado. We've been targeting Colorado for a while, and specifically Tempe, Arizona, two high drought regions. But we're also going to go beyond just replenishing water, and we're going to go into water quality and habitat.
Nice, thanks. And then the next question is, what is your stance on deposit recovery systems? Excellent question.
Historically, I think you have seen the Coca-Cola company has not necessarily been in support of that. We're evolving, we're learning, and we think every region is different. There are regions where the DRS systems have proved out if organized properly. One example of such is Oregon. Oregon has a system that is run by the producers. Legislation has mandated that has to happen. They have mandated minimum collection rates. If not, it triggers a higher deposit. That happened 4 or 5 years ago, went up to a dime. They're now at about 90. Well, COVID hit them a little bit, but they're going to finish around 83%, 84, we believe. They were over 90% pre-COVID. That's a type of system that works. It's run by the producers. The government oversees it, but it runs by producers. The money stays within the system and all goes back to the infrastructure of the system. Now, we don't think that's right for everywhere. Every city, every town, every state is unique, but that's an area where that it was right, and it could be right in other areas, and we're open to discussing it.
And Coke is working, Coke is a participant in the Oregon cooperative?
Absolutely.
All right.
All the major bottlers are.
Okay.
That's who makes up the board of directors. That's who runs the system. There's an executive, it's run like a nonprofit. There's a group that runs it. The board of directors is the bottling system. So, and it's run that way, and it has been for years, and it's been successful.
Nice, thanks. And one more question, and this kind of question probably applies to Ball for aluminum, Molson Coors for glass, but more so for plastic, Mike. But it's the commodity value of recycled plastic or recycled glass or aluminum versus the virgin commodity. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting right now. Coming into COVID, I'm not sure what drove it. I'm not a commodities expert, but I'll say two things. One, as more organizations are making pledges of having recycled content into their containers, that's inherently, I believe, going to drive the value up. And we saw that starting to happen. There's competition for it. And then suddenly the cost of virgin rPET plummeted. And that puts a lot of pressure on companies of, okay, how much money are we leaving at the table if we don't use rPET? I'm proud to say we've stayed solid. In the Colorado manufacturing plant, we're using 30% rPET in our plastic bottles. There's another 25% in the rest of the region that we operate in. But one of the big problems, and we discussed this earlier, is finding the rPET, getting the rPET, which is driven by a few things. One of them is our collection rates. Our collection rates of plastic containers are not high enough in the U.S., and therefore the supply of rPET is not there. Another problem is if it's used to be downcycled. So if there's plastic, if there's good rPET available, and then we use it to downcycle into another material, it's not available to close the circularity loop on bottle to bottle, which is our objective. And that's our ultimate goal within the Coke system, is bottle to bottle. We use that over again. So hope that answers that.
Yeah, thanks. Renee or Sara, if you have any perspective on the recycled value versus virgin commodity value.
I think that you have to keep your eye on the ball and on the long game, right? So, prices fluctuate, and certainly I mentioned a few times that there's a lot of ways that circularity pays for itself, and sometimes you pay for circularity, right? And so recycled content for at least a short to medium term is going to be more expensive than a virgin plastic. But there's no point in recycling if there's no demand champions out there for it, right? So it's just a matter of assessing what's important to you, and then what we do is build a case for leadership for why it's worth supporting.
All right, thanks. All right, let's continue. I think John's next. John, if you'll introduce yourself and then dive into your slides.
All right, very good. Good to be with all of you. If you sat in on the keynote, there'll be a little bit of repetitive material here. But anyway, I'm John. I'm CEO of Momentum Recycling. We founded Momentum in 2008, so I've been in the recycling sector for about 12 years. Before that, I was in the technology world for 15 years or so. Had the chance to make a switch to something that's a better fit for my values, and haven't regretted a minute of it, despite its day-to-day fun, shall we say. Next slide, please. So what we do in Colorado, we run a processing plant, and we enable, along with our partners at Rocky Mountain Bottle Company and OI, we enable bottle-to-bottle closed-loop glass recycling in Colorado. So we opened this facility in 2016. And so since 2016, all glass finding its way into single stream is turned back into bottles right here in Colorado. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we do take glass from the single stream. That was a challenge for a long time in the state. When glass gets commingled with all the other recyclables in there, it's very challenging to recycle. It finds its way into the MRFs. It's mixed with a whole range of other stuff that goes in the recycling bins. at the MRF, they do their best to separate the glass out from the other materials. They take a range of steps to try and clean it up before it comes to us. Despite all those valiant efforts, it still comes to us maybe about 75, 80%. We have some cases where it's cleaner than that, but that's typically where it runs on average. That's the glass percentage and the loads delivered to us. So our job is to clean that and refine it, if you will, so that it can be used to make new bottles again. We get rid of the labels, we sort it by color, we size it. We remove any non-glass contamination like ceramics, porcelain, rocks and stones, basically anything that's going to stand in the way of making a new bottle. And then we provide that cleaned waste glass, as I said, to the Rocky Mountain Bottle Corporation, which is a joint venture with OI and Miller Coors. And then that's in Wheat Ridge. And then the other plant we supply is the OI plant up in Windsor near Fort Collins. So basically, again, true circular economy here in Colorado. So we believe that Colorado is a great place to build more circular economies. But in order to do this, we need to attract more end markets and more processors, and we need to set the table a bit better for them. Potential end markets and processors, they're going to look at many different communities before deciding on the best place to site their next operation. Anyone who's looking in the kind of central west, if you're not going to the West Coast, if you're looking at kind of a central west area, you're going to look at places like Denver, Phoenix, Vegas, Salt Lake, communities like that. And so, we are competing, and we need to put the best foot forward. And the term I keep coming back to is we really need to set a good table, make it attractive. So what I'd like to do with the rest of the presentation is kind of share our experience at Momentum and how our coming to Denver, we're a Salt Lake-based company, so how us opening in Denver, can shed some light on what these challenges are like, and what if we want to develop more circular economies, the challenges we have to address to make it attractive for other processors in end markets. They're definitely considering things like zoning, tax incentives, real estate costs, labor availability, all the standard economic stuff that anybody's going to evaluate. And certainly the state, OEDIT can be a great partner, and there's a lot of those types of factors that are out there. But two really large factors that are not typically addressed through incentive programs like that are supply of raw materials and demand for finished product. These are for-profit businesses after all, and they're going to go where they're going to be able to generate the most profit. So at Momentum, we struggled with both of these items, both supply and demand. So we can go through that. The supply slide is up. The surprise to us was that we didn't get, sorry, can you go back one more slide? Thank you. Surprise to us was that there was not enough glass coming out of the waste stream. Our plant is running probably about 70–75% capacity. Obviously with any manufacturing facility, you like to be close to capacity. So our model showed us having a lot more supply than we're actually getting. Volume is absolutely critical for any processor or manufacturer in order to generate enough gross profit to cover the debt service and other fixed costs. You need a lot of equipment to do this stuff, and that equipment's expensive, and so volume is critical. So if we can't show a prospective processor or manufacturer that there's enough volume, it's not going to happen. I think there was a great comment made about the availability of, and I think Raj, it was out of your material in the keynote, or you or Alicia, but you talked about PET in Arizona and how you concluded that there, in a city the size of Phoenix, there wasn't enough PET available to justify the manufacturing facility of recycled PET. So, I mean, that's a great example. Even in a large community like Phoenix, like Denver, where you have large population centers, it can be challenging to generate enough supply. In Colorado, we only get about 25% of the waste glass generated along the Front Range. The rest is still going to the landfill. The main barrier in our case is access to recycling containers for both residents and businesses. There's some pockets where there's high participation rates, city and county of Denver, Boulder County, a few places, like that. But in many parts of the state, there are kind of open market models for recycling where not every household is required to have a recycling bin. And if they want a recycling bin, it costs a premium to have one. So the participation rates are quite low. So those are things that we need to work on if we want to attract other processors and manufacturers. And this is where governments have an opportunity to kind of help set the table, as I've said. We recently saw a great outcome, at least from my perspective, a great outcome in Arvada in recent months, where the city council changed from an open market model to a single provider model. I think that's going to start in a year or so. But the fact that that vote was successful was actually a big step forward, and again, in my opinion, in the state. And if we can do more of that, that's going to help attract more processors and markets to the state. It's going to help develop more circular economies. So let's talk about demand a little bit. Next slide, please. So again, these are for-profit businesses. You got to have raw material to process, and then you got to, be able to sell it. The demand for recycled content is not always as strong as we'd like it to be. In some cases, we're competing directly with virgin materials, and if you can't be cheaper or at least as on par price-wise with virgin material, is not going to happen. Things like the commitments that Mike was talking about, and frankly, Renee and Sara talked about as well, those types of commitments are going to be what helps break us out of some of this cycle and helps generate a better profitability picture for processors and manufacturers to provide the incentive, the financial incentive, for that for-profit business to get cited in a place like Denver. So if we can help provide more incentives, certainly EPR is out there. I know it's controversial, but I think there's incentives that can be brought to bear as well. Certainly voluntary commitments on the corporate level, as all of you have talked about, which I think is fantastic, and hats off to all of your organizations for those commitments. But that's what's going to allow the profitability to get kind of liberated from, being pegged to virgin material pricing, and help the recycling sector develop more circular economies. It also, I think, will help inspire more end market, more manufacturing that consumes recycled content. So if there's incentives available, someone who might never have thought about using, recycled glass in a process, for example, might now consider doing so. And so maybe we add a third or a fourth customer, and we can help, further drive the recycling circle in the state. So again, governments have the opportunity to help set the table here, state, local. The work that we do here in this organization, Recycle Colorado, is really important. One of my favorite things to do in this organization is to be involved in the policy activities, whether it's speaking on, during legislative sessions on bills like SB 55 that was passed. I spoke at the Arvada Council meeting. I mean, I'd love to get involved in stuff like that, because it's what it's going to take to drive that increased circularity and attract more of it to the state. Next slide. I think that's about it for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's enough. I can stop there. Thanks.
Thanks, John. A couple of questions that have come up for you. You mentioned incentives. Can you give some examples?
I mean, sure. If there was a tax credit that could be claimed for using a certain percentage of recycled content, for example, maybe that's an income tax credit that a corporation could aspire to. Perhaps there's some property tax incentives as well for using more recycled content in the product. There's a range of tools, all traditional economic development tools that could be brought to bear. So it doesn't have to be all, stick. There could be carrots out there too to help companies drive these policies.
Okay, thanks. And then the next question is, what can Colorado do to help processors and end users face the challenges you did in starting up?
That's a great question. Well, certainly the startup of a new industrial facility, processing or manufacturing, is the most expensive time. It's the riskiest time. You've laid out the most in cash for all this brand new fancy equipment. The startup process itself, you don't just turn it on and go. There's a serious break-in period, and when you make some silly mistakes like we did, the break-in period's a little longer than you'd like it to be. It's expensive. And taxes are very expensive early on, especially property taxes. The business personal property tax issue has been a big one for us as we're in the early stages of a new venture, trying to get it off the ground and profitable. That equipment has the most economic value. It's new, and so its tax rates at the very highest. So those tax dollars are large. So there's some. And frankly, that was a big part for me of the SB 55 that passed, was the potential to see some relief in the form of business personal property tax for processors and manufacturers that are diving into the recycling sector. So those are some of the examples. I'm sure as an organization, we got a lot of smart people that work in this in Recycle Colorado that volunteer their time. And I know between all of us, we can come up with some great ideas.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, John. There is a question from Vanessa, but I'm going to leave that till the end because I want to ask that of all the panelists. So if we can go to Ron next. So Ron's, if you'll dive in with your intro and your presentation.
Awesome. Hi, Ron Basak-Smith. Excited to be here today. Everyone's having a good day. So I am the CEO and co-founder of Sana Packaging. And the most important thing I want to just point out in the intro is that worked in the liquor industry for 4 years, saw that, really excited to see Molson, Coors, and Ball working on solutions for that industry. But the reason I started Sana Packaging was really from that experience and seeing a new industry, that being cannabis industry, evolving the same way, and going to have a ton of single-use materials with some of its own unique aspects. So I can jump in now and kind of talk about the company and what we do. So Sana Packaging is a cannabis packaging company. Our main goal is designing packaging for a circular economy for that industry. And, you might ask yourself, why are we working in the cannabis industry? What are the reasons for that? And, the cannabis industry really presents some unique challenges and opportunities around packaging. It being a new industry means that, we basically have the ability to set the framework at a ground level and really work in a space that doesn't have any norms around packaging. And the other thing of why is really because cannabis packaging has unique regulations around it. A lot of the packaging doesn't fit into a traditional system. So, the product being state by state, and the product being locked within those state lines, moving the material outside of state lines, potential risks there. And just basically an onslaught of new material types coming into the space, and many different product types that need to be packaged. So, food, beverage, and then, cannabis flower, they all need different types of packaging. We got started in 2017, and moving forward onto the next slide. So we basically launched our first product in 2018. We were the industry's first hemp-based biocomposite. The idea here, the industry has a ton of byproduct materials. So from the cultivation side of things, what do we do with the unused parts of the plant, right? And so this is what that product represents. 2019, we launched with a reclaimed ocean plastic. And so here, the idea with our company is really, we want to be an end market and a place to bring these new and emerging materials in, and recycled and reclaimed materials. And next, so to date, we've already removed 70,000 tons of plastic waste from our ocean, and we've used more than 65 tons of hemp plastic so far. We're proud of this, but it's really only scratching the surface as far as the issue here, right? Like we're we're doing one part of the whole circularity target that we're working towards. And then going forward here. So, you know, I'm sure most people here kind of have a general understanding and idea of, you know, what a linear economy looks like. And where we fall in a circular economy, you know, we figured out, yes, we can make things. We're definitely good at consuming things. But the part of the puzzle here that Sana really wants to help be a catalyst for is this return and enrich, so that when we are making things, we're supporting the recycling industry and supporting emerging materials. And so I wanted to, on the next slide here, we have really the meat of what we want to get into here. There's three things that I feel for end markets, and, you know, getting to that point, like we talked about in the point of this presentation, is how do you create a profitable company with these, while also having circularity be a key component of it. And, you know, for us, it's really been important to build this from the ground up, you know, understanding as a company that what our margins are going to be, what our supplies are going to be, really helps us go out and decide what products we can make, how we can make them, how many we can make, who is our customer base, and such. So first and foremost, we found in creating a brand that represents circularity is really the narrative that we're speaking and creating for our customers. It's a, you know, things get lost in translation really easily. So if when we say something and, you know, give people an understanding of what circularity is, oftentimes when they communicate that with their customers, it comes out a lot differently. So we basically, for all of our customers, we have a customer engagement PDF that we send them, and it basically lets them know how they should be talking about these products to their end customers. So for us, our customers are brands and dispensaries mostly. So they're selling, you know, for a brand, it's really important that they can meet their goals and targets and, you know, stay true to their mission. And in the cannabis industry, this is really hard. Unlike more established industries, we're not going to have, the companies that are buying from us are not going to have the ability, like a Molson Coors, to go out and create their own packaging, you know, work through their own supply chain. They're just trying to get product to market right now. So there really isn't a company out there that can help them through this problem. And so what's the narrative? Why are these companies buying the product? What impact are they making? How should they discuss it with their customers? You know, the example to use here with the ocean plastic is it's reclaimed, it's not recycled. So what is that differentiation? You know, it's products that haven't been put into the recycling stream, or maybe at one point it was, but currently it's not within a system. And so, you know, there's going to be an increased cost basically to go out and reclaim that material and get it back into usable form. The next thing, how do we get to circularity? This is where we are most focused on, and, you know, once again, building the business from the ground up is really important here, because, you know, it's like I said, it's great that we've removed material, but how do we actually get that material back to remanufacture in the various material types? We as a company, we're material agnostic because, one, there's several different types of cannabis products, and each one of those products is going to require a different material type, or there's a material type that's more ideal. And then obviously when something is displayed on a shelf, the consumer's reaction to the appearance of that product often is really important. So appearance and feel, right? So the customer picks it up. Does this feel like a quality product? Does this not feel like a quality product? And these types of consumer behaviors can also oftentimes move us away from the idea of circularity. It's going to be harder. It's just not a one size fits all type of scenario, like with a beer can, for example, right? And so for us, it's really about setting things up on a localized state by state level, right? So with the cannabis industry, these materials aren't leaving the brands that we service. They're oftentimes almost exclusively working within one state. There's a few multi-state operators, but really, how do we support small businesses that also want to make an impact? And then, you know, hopefully, as we're seeing, these companies are growing, and so starting at that ground level is really important. And once again, like the main thing here is just that we, as a company, have to make a commitment that, you know, when we source material, that we're only sourcing recycled or reclaimed material. When we're making a biocomposite, where's that material coming from? How far is it traveling? All of these unique things that we see within the cannabis space. And then lastly, the biggest thing that we find is that we have to accomplish is consumer buy-in. And this is really one of the reasons why we're so focused in the cannabis space, is that we see a lot of new companies with mission statements around being a positive impact in the environment, being a positive impact to the localities that they're selling into. But then they don't really have solutions to meet those targets or goals or their mission statement. And so the consumer buy-in is really important here, and finding those customers who are willing to work with us and work with the system and potentially change their own system so that they can accomplish their goals. For example, this is a lot of consumer education, and that's takes time and energy. And so a company has to have this be a key part of their business model. And then from the supply side of things, they really have to be willing to work with a riskier system. You know, I think everyone here understands at the end of the day that using a reclaimed or recycled material, there's always the supply issue, right? And so are we always going to be able to have the correct material in the correct amount to meet the demands of a growing company? For us, this is, I think, a lot easier than a lot of the larger companies and, you know, in industries outside of the cannabis space, because we're just dealing with smaller volumes right now, right? But that's going to change. And so finding those companies that right now are willing to say, you know, for example, we don't offer colors for our products. We have a brown tube, we have a white tube. The brown one is the hemp-based one, and the white one is the reclaimed ocean plastic. And so, you know, if a company wants a green tube, they will have to, there's just not a sustainable option for that right now. And so they basically are making a sacrifice on their brand appearance potentially, or they, you know, just have to find a label combination or a color combination that looks good in the current available options. And same goes for, like, you know, sizes, variations, all of that. And so for us, we've been super fortunate in this industry to find customers out there who are willing to work with us because it's truly embedded in their company ethos. And I think, you know, if you're looking for markets out there in which to implement circularity, it really comes down to, are there people out there and are there businesses out there where reducing the amount of waste is core to their belief system and core to their goals. And so that is our number one thing that we have to nail as a company, is really getting consumers to buy in and work within the systems that are different than a traditional packaging company. And so, yeah, we've been really, really fortunate in the cannabis space to find these companies. But at the end of the day, you know, it's still a very small, we have a very small market share compared to, you know, companies using virgin material or no percentage of recycled material. And that is pretty much it. There's my contact information, and yeah, would love to hear some questions.
Thanks, Ron. One question for you, and then I have one question for the panel, and that's probably going to be it for a panel conversation, because we've had a solid set of presentations and some great questions being thrown at the panelists, and good discussion going on that. So, Ron, the question for you is, what's your Sana's vision for packaging? What excites you about packaging? Where is packaging going for in the future? Yeah.
You know, I think just, you know, listening to the other companies speak today, it's really, the excitement is that we're all working on this, right? I think the world of packaging and waste is, this stuff is all evolving in real time, right? And the world's population is growing. We're learning that, you know, there's just a lot of difficulties around packaging and packaging waste. And what we can do about it is, now that we've recognized that there's a problem, is fix it. And that's what I hear in these conversations, and that's what I think the consumer is demanding too. So we now have an opportunity to take what is the world of packaging has played a great role in getting products to consumers, and now we just have to kind of finish the loop here and get those materials back in a responsible way and use them as efficiently as possible. So I think what excites me is that we're at a turning point here, and it's exciting to see major corporations working on this and having these conversations.
Thanks, Ron. Tim, do I have time for one last question to the panel, or
we do? Keep it going.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Tim. So Vanessa asked this question very early on, but I think it's relevant to the panel, and I'm going to open it up to whoever wants to chime in. But Vanessa asks, what are the pros and cons of landfill mining to go get all these materials that are being put in landfills anyway? And we know that diversion is not doing well in the US in general. So pros and cons of landfill mining. Any of you guys have an opinion on that? The question was asked during Sarah's presentation. When Sara, you showed all those statistics on how well we're doing with aluminum.
Happy to jump in from the aluminum perspective. So, I think aluminum, because there's value in the material, and and with all these materials, of course, but potentially easier from a landfill mining perspective to capture aluminum back out of once it's been landfilled. I think there is a lot of cost associated and potential return. We're not sure. What I will say is, Ball is looking into, as I think I mentioned in my presentation, many other private sector solutions to go hand in hand with legislative policy on how to capture some of this material back into the system, investing in second eddy currents or, things like that. And landfill mining has certainly come up on the list of opportunities that we're looking at, and to assess if there's a cost benefit there.
Thanks, Sara. John, do you have as a recycler, do you have an opinion on landfill mining?
I mean, certainly there's a lot of valuable materials going to landfill. I would say, to Sarah's point, aluminum, metals in general are probably where the value really lies. I mean, you compare glass, for example, to aluminum. There's probably 16 times the value in aluminum than there is in glass waste. So, I think you'd have to look at the cost benefit on it. I mean, I immediately want to put my business planning hat on and be like, okay, what equipment do you need to buy? And, how much labor do you need to run it? And what's that all going to cost? And what's your output going to be? And how much are you going to be able to sell it for? And my instinct, I've never really looked at this, I should say, but my instinct is that while virgin materials are so relatively easy to access, and again, that's going to differ material to material. We talked about bauxite, for example, with aluminum, a much different story than, say, sands or limestones for glass. But while virgin materials are still relatively easy to access, that's not going to be a profitable endeavor. The value of recyclables have to be driven much higher than they are today, not just at aluminum type levels, but all recyclables have to drive up in value. And I think that's only going to happen when, the price point versus virgin materials is significantly different than it is today. That's just my instinct, but.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think with that, I'll end the session. I want to thank the panelists for giving us their time for this very good panel and really interesting conversations. And Tim, I'm going to hand it back to you.
I want to thank the whole group. I think it was a great conversation. I know we've got 2 sessions left and they're starting in about 30 seconds. So I'll let you guys go, and thanks for all your time. And again, the panelists, great job with everybody. I really appreciate it all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.